You may have woken up in the dark this morning. That's because Eskom implemented stage 2 rolling blackouts. This will continue until 4 p.m. this afternoon. It's then back to stage 4 until tomorrow midnight. The power utility says there's a shortage of generation capacity. Energy expert Ted Blom joins us now to shed a bit of light on this subject. Mr. Blom, good morning and thank you very much for your time. You know, you actually warned citizens to prepare for more load shedding 2 days ago in a tweet of yours.
Absolutely correctly. So I had a look at the statistics that Eskom was putting out on a daily basis, and it seemed to me that they actually did load shed on the weekend, but they didn't actually advise us of the load shedding, so they did it surreptitiously as they've done in the past. But I thought it wise on Tuesday to go out and warn the public to prepare, because the last thing you want to do is be unprepared when there's load shedding all over the show.
But honestly, what is your view on the pace at which the crisis committee is moving? Because we expect roughly 1,950 megawatts to be added to the grid, but this honestly won't cover Eskom's immediate shortfall.
No, you're absolutely correct. And the 1,900 megawatts they talk about is renewable, non-dispatchable power. In other words, it will only be on while the sun shines or while the wind blows. And that's not the type of power that we need to run this economy. I've already said that it seemed to me that the crisis committee's agenda is business as usual. And I put forward what I would have done if it was a crisis. I would have had a 60-day plan to stop the load shedding immediately. And I know how we can finance that as well without picking up too much pain. But it seems to me this government is distant from its people. It's not interested in hearing what's going on. I mean, I'm a member of a group of 250 energy players, and not one of us was consulted during the so-called presidential consultation process prior to appointing the crisis task force from the ministers. So it seems to me that this has not been taken seriously enough. We can stop this load shedding within 60 days on an emergency basis while we then enact what Mr. Ramaphosa's men have proposed.
It's honestly unfortunate to hear that you weren't engaged or invited to some of those high-level meetings, because you are actually among those people that were assembled back then by former President Thabo Mbeki when the country was faced with somewhat of a similar crisis. So one would think they would perhaps want to tap into some of your expertise. But if you speak of a 60-day plan, what would that look like? Because we do have decision makers that watch. What would it look like, honestly?
Okay, so I mean, you'll recall that about a year ago, Beirut had that massive explosion next to their power station due to the fertilizer explosion, and Beirut was left in darkness. And within 7 days, the team that I was in consultation with, and who've made a written offer to Eskom, within 7 days, they restored the power to Beirut. You cannot run a city or a town or a country without electricity. It will be mayhem and writing left, right, and center. And the same team is available to start dropping down electricity at the rate of 1 gigawatt within 3 weeks, and thereafter 1 gigawatt a week. So we can solve the Eskom problem within 60 days in terms of stopping the load shedding. It comes at a price. Of course, everything comes at a price, but the fact is the cost of the load shedding is more than 10 times higher than the price that the emergency power would come with.
And I mean, the cost to the economy is honestly very, very worrisome, because most people right now are closing their businesses. Some are retrenching. It's just untenable at this point.
No, you're 100% right. And I mean, I've recalculated the cost of unserved energy. The economists have done a very simple calculation. They've worked out the GDP divided by the electricity consumed in the economy. But the fact of the matter is, and you will know it as much as I do, that every day we have load shedding, the disruptive factor is far more than just the kilowatts that aren't delivered. So I would say that the actual cost of load shedding is probably 5 to 8 times higher, the 100 Rand a kilowatt hour that the economist has worked out as the cost of load shedding. Because, as you've said, people give up. You can't have people waiting to start work, and you've got to keep on paying them. So you send them home so that you don't have to pay them. And that's the whole day's production lost. And that's where I get my calculation, which I think is far more realistic. And against that number, anything to stop load shedding looks like an absolute bargain.
So if we are to confine ourselves to this energy plan, how long do you think it will take to close the energy gap?
Well, I think the government themselves have acknowledged that it's a 4 to 5 year plan. And the fact of the matter is, what they haven't done is they haven't factored in the loss of the 6 power stations that they've earmarked for refurbishment. Now, I'm very pro refurbishment. Let's get the stuff up and running like it should be. I don't know why Kusile is in that group, because Kusile should still be under manufacturer's warranty from the last sentiments that the CEO discussed with the public. But nevertheless, in principle, I think it's the right thing to do. But if you take any one of those 6 packs off, you're going to dump 3,600 megawatts of power from the grid. So the situation is more serious and more dire than I think the 7 wise ministers actually realize. You need to bring in supplemental power to stop the load shedding and give you the space to fix up those 6 power stations, if that's what you want to do. And as I said, I endorse the fixing up of the power stations. Whether I would have chosen those 6 or others, that's a matter of debate. But I'm not on the ground at Eskom, so I don't have the hot numbers. But nevertheless, the principle is correct. Let's fix it up. We should have been fixing it up since the day 1 of Mr. De Ruyter's tenure. He promised to do it, and then he disappeared. He got lost. Now he's seemingly back on track. Let's help him, but let's make it sure that we can actually get through this with some businesses intact and schools intact, that we don't have another lost generation and more unemployment because of the load shedding.
No, most certainly we don't want more unemployment. Mr. Blom, thank you very much for your insights. That's energy expert Ted Blom.